You're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. live, Eastern Time, that is live. You can join us, be in the chat room. I want to talk to you about what's going on in North Korea, the persecution that's there. If you watched the video just prior to this one, we were talking about end time scenarios, a time when the Antichrist comes in and specifies that if you do not take the mark of the beast, you don't get money, you don't get your job, you don't get any, you don't eat, and we'll hunt you down and we'll kill you. Well, North Korea is already starting to work in that direction. Not starting, they are picking up some speed here. Michael Faust, writing for ChristianHeadlines.com, talks about a new report by a human rights watchdog outfit detailing violations of religious freedom in North Korea. This includes citizens who are brutally tortured for converting to Christianity, individuals publicly executed merely for owning a Bible. The 98-page report by London-based Korea Future Initiative was released this month and based on 117 interviews with survivors, witnesses, and perpetrators of the abuses. Altogether, 273 victims of religious freedom violations were identified, including 215 involving Christians and 56 from followers of shamanism. The age of the victims ranged from 3 to 80 plus. The author said the report's goal was to provide an accurate account of religious freedom violations for decision makers within the international community. That Christianity is unlawful, illegal in North Korea. That citizens are told to treat the supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, as a god. So here's some of the religious freedom violations detailed in that report. A government official was shot and killed at an airfield in front of a crowd. What was his crime? It was discovered that he had a Bible. Public executions, quote, were designed to instill fear into crowds who had been summoned, end of quote. A Christian was tied to a wooden stake at a public market and executed by a firing squad. Crime? She possessed a Bible. A witness said, I saw the flesh fall off. That's how close I was. Other individuals in the report were arrested for owning a Bible. Christians were tortured by having a liquid with red pepper poured down their nostrils. They tilt a person's neck backwards, a witness said. They mix the red pepper powder into a water kettle and pour the water into the nostrils. At first they hold you tightly by tying you from the back. Then as you sneeze and cough, you tell false statements about things you have never done. A convert to Christianity was placed inside a steel cage and its bars were charged with an electric current. Usually, it says, prisoners lasted only 3 or 4 hours in the cage. But this eyewitness, this man who was in that cage, said, I sat there for 12 hours and I prayed. I kept praying to God to save me, the God who suffered injuries on a cross. Would he save me, who is suffering injuries to the face and right leg and to my entire body now? 6 individuals were assembled in front of a crowd of over 1,000 citizens from each person's unit household and charged with committing superstitious acts, very nebulous charge. 5 were sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. A 6th person, a physically disabled person in a wheelchair, was sentenced to life. The report listed other forms of torture for Christians and adherents of other religions, like, quote, being forced to hang on steel bars while being beaten with something I can't pronounce, being hung by their legs, having their body tightly bound with sticks, being forced to perform squat jumps, and to sit and stand hundreds or thousands of times every day, being forced to kneel with a wooden bar inserted between their knee hollows, strangulation, being forced to witness the execution or torture of other prisoners, starvation, being forced to ingest polluted food, being forced into solitary confinement, being deprived of sleep, being forced to remain seated and still for up to beyond 12 hours a day. At least one exiled human rights advocate contributed to the report. He said the international community must take action against North Korea. The cruel actions of the privileged few in North Korea who take their lives and control our thoughts must be prevented. North Korean officials whose crimes evoke thoughts of Auschwitz must be identified and held accountable, he said. The question is asked, can it happen here? Well, it's called communism, and there are people in high places right here in the U.S. who plan, manipulate, educate our children in the glories of such a system. Of course, these stories I just related won't happen here. We will simply have the best that communal living affords. In my youth, China was a very faraway place of mystery. We knew it existed, we had no idea what was coming. In the 1940s, Japan invaded China, the ancient art of conquering one's neighbors. The U.S. came to China's aid and ultimately defeated Japan. Japan became a little piece of U.S. culture in the Far East. China became an outcast. But China was, even then, evolving. Her leaders bought into communism, and soon ordinary Chinese were being treated like cattle or worse. In the 1970s, President Nixon thought China could serve as a counterweight to the Soviet Union. We set out to help China enter the 20th century. What China did was embrace communism. With the end of the 20th century right around the corner, China was granted most favored nation trading status and membership in the World Trade Organization. Succeeding presidents encouraged trade with China, bringing them into the world family. Only that's not what has happened. China bought into communism and began building both a strong economy and a large military. The American people were not being told just how dangerous China was. American businesses took advantage of China's economic standards and began shipping industries to China, all the while looking the other way when it came to leadership and their dreams. China now has 1.4 billion, with a B, citizens. The Communist Party has 90 million, with an elite class of 300 million additional Chinese, deeply invested in the regime's success. Today, the Chinese military boasts 2 million men, including the world's largest navy. Yep, they got the biggest one. In the last 5 years, the naval war game simulations in which the U.S. is pitted against China, the U.S. has failed to come out victorious. We do not have enough ships and munitions to defeat that size of an enemy. Their air forces building advanced fighter aircraft that rival anything we have. In 1995, two People's Liberation Army colonels wrote a book, Unrestricted Warfare. In it, they maintained China must be prepared to use whatever means necessary to achieve victory. This includes economic warfare, political and economic warfare, terrorism, biological warfare, and some conventional and nuclear warfare as well. China is currently perfecting a system of social credit scoring. It is a constant monitoring of its people, using the tools of social media. The goal? Grading each person based on his or her support of the regime. China also harvests organs from the Uyghur population for sale both to China and abroad. It's doubtful that these people are volunteers. They favor these organs because the Uyghur people do not drink alcohol nor eat pork. They are also especially desirable to wealthy Muslims in the Middle East. 370,000 Chinese are matriculating at our universities. Every one of them is subject to Article 7 of the PRC's National Intelligence Law of 2017. That law makes it mandatory that they spy on their professors and the students, and that they explain the research they're doing. This has resulted in between $500 and $600 billion of intellectual property that has left the country. That's every year. U.S. investment banks are also selling trillions of dollars of debt and equity in Chinese corporations. They're selling them to American investors and retirees. They're betting on China to succeed at the expense of the United States. Our own new president played nicey-nice with China when he was vice president, getting his son a stipend from essentially the government of China, simply because he was the U.S. vice president's son. China has stolen over $6 trillion of U.S. intellectual property, including technical innovations coming out of New England and elsewhere. And we know that the COVID-19 virus came from China. In the fall of 2019, China's government closed down flights from Wuhan to the rest of China. She did not close flights to Europe and the U.S. It took our president, Donald J. Trump, to stop those flights from coming here. And China's foreign ministry, as well as one of their propaganda arms, pushed for a reversal of this policy. They did this knowing full well how contagious the virus really is. We asked to be let into Wuhan to assess just what we were up against, to help us fight it, be able to start developing solutions. The Chinese government said no. That is more of the people's war. Now it seems we have a president who is cozy with these people, out of ignorance, greed, opportunism, or maybe he knows things we don't. Whatever it isn't in the best interest of the United States. Keep your eye on what this president does with China and with every other enemy of our way of life.